Hello and welcome along to the Weather Studio Live. It's 1 o'clock, it's Tuesday. I'm Alex Deakin.
I'm Aidan McKibben. We're broadcasting live from the Met Office HQ in Exeter. Please do send in your comments and questions. We'll answer as many as we can throughout today's programme.
Yes, no Claire today, but we have been joined by a couple of guests and obviously a couple of extra bits of kit you may have spotted on the table in front. Send in what you think they may be. Here's a clue. We're mostly talking about rain today.
Right, we were talking about how wet it's been this autumn so far in some parts of the UK. We're going to be talking about, of course, how much more rain there is to come, whether there is any dry weather in sight, but also be talking about these.
How we measure rain, yes, how much rain we've actually seen, and yes, as Aidan says, talking about the forecast because there are still warnings in force on Thursday in particular, so we'll be looking at that as well. But first,
it's not all about the rain.
No, we've got some glorious pictures.
This
makes me quite emotional. This picture, I spotted this on Twitter earlier on from Octovision Media. This is my favourite bridge. It's not the Golden Gate Bridge. This is the Humber Bridge, surrounded or shrouded, I should say, by fog taken a couple of days ago. Absolutely
stunning,
gorgeous, just stunning. Interesting fact about the Humber Bridge. The longest single-span suspension bridge in the world that you can walk over.
That is an interesting
fact. There you go.
And I should know how long it is because you wrote a pub quiz, didn't you? A Met Office pub quiz in which that was the answer.
That was the tiebreaker.
2 years running, that was the
just in case people remember. I love the Humber Bridge, and that is just gorgeous. That is just gorgeous with that fog coming in. But we've also got some other interesting image of stuff taken last weekend.
Yeah, let's go to the other side of Europe here, and a little beach village called Hailuoto.
Oh, good pronunciation.
Pretty sure I've got that right.
Good pronunciation. If you're watching in Finland, or if you can speak Finnish, let us know how Aidan's pronunciation was there.
Okay, let's have a look at this. What was spotted there? These on the beach. They at first sight they look like pebbles, don't they?
They do, but they're not. Made of ice, apparently.
Ice eggs. A beach covered in ice eggs. Taken by, I should actually mention the person who took the photo. I should have put it on there.
Finnish pronunciation again, but yeah, these are balls of ice that are generated by the sea. Any little small pebble or even just a snowflake can just start gathering ice. So if the temperature's just right, the wind speed's just right, and the waves are just right, basically you just get a build-up of ice around a tiny little object, and it eventually forms these balls, and they're all different sizes depending on how long they're out at sea and what they form around. They're quite rare.
Yeah, we found these on Instagram at Rismatti, Rismatti. If you want to take a look at his profile on Instagram, he's the one who took the images. Amazing, so beautiful, aren't they? And you know, they are rare because you need perfect weather conditions for them. Temperatures just below freezing, and you need a gentle sloping sandy beach and a gentle kind of swell coming in from the sea to kind of roll these and shape them into
and of course,
an egg
as soon as the temperature rises, they just melt and disappear as well. So you have to witness them just at the right time as well. You've got to be quick. But absolutely fascinating stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, those ice eggs from Finland.
That was last weekend in Finland. Meanwhile, of course, last weekend in the UK, things were very wet indeed. Some pretty horrendous scenes we've seen throughout this week of the flooding situation across parts of Yorkshire and the Midlands as well. And just huge amounts of rainfall really falling through last weekend. And, well, as I said, with further rain coming at the moment this week, there could be some further issues, particularly in that highly sensitive area around Sheffield and Matlock as well. Amounts of rainfall that we saw, or we'll speak about them with Mark McCarthy in just a moment, because that's what we're looking at really for the next 5 or so minutes. How much rain did we see, and how wet has autumn been? Because it wasn't just a one-off event last weekend. It's been raining for much of autumn since about the end of September. We've seen huge amounts of rainfall. Some places have already seen their November average, and we're only a third of the way through the month. So yes, some large amounts of rainfall. Are you having problems there with the graphics?
No problem. No problem. I'll
just keep talking then, shall I?
About
these are, as you may have guessed, some people may have sent in already. These are rain gauges, and we'll be talking about those with Ellie in just a moment as well. How we actually measure rainfall. It's gone black again, Aidan. Is it
It's
working?
flashing black.
Flashing black. It's
Yeah.
flashing black. Doesn't look good. It doesn't seem to like it. But yeah, how much rainfall have we seen, and will we see any more? Actually, tomorrow the forecast looks pretty good. Most places are going to be dry and bright, and we should see some sunshine. But it's staying cold. One of the big things about the weather. Oh, that looks promising. That looks like what it should look like.
Okay.
But yes, it is staying on the cold side, and there is more rain to come. But shall we bring in Mark?
Let's bring Mark.
Shall we bring in Mark?
Hopefully.
Enough about me
Hopefully,
rambling
that's
on there. Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Hello.
You've been on the programme a few times now,
Yeah.
but just remind the viewers who maybe have not seen you before what your name is, what your role is here at the Met Office.
Yeah, so I'm Mark McCarthy and I head up the National Climate Information Centre. So we sort of are the custodians of the climate records for the UK.
You are the stat man. There's
Yes,
nothing you don't know about weather stats. Absolutely
Well,
brilliant.
there's plenty I don't know.
But there's lots and lots you do know. Should we look at this first of all? Because just some incredible numbers coming out from South Yorkshire from last weekend and over the autumn so far.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been monitoring the rainfall and how wet it has been in parts of the country. And for us, we look at the autumn season spans 1st of September through to 30th of November, which allows us to provide consistency with the historical records as well. And so just focusing on Sheffield, which saw a lot of rainfall last week particularly, and has seen a bit more since. And that rainfall, the sort of heavy rain that fell last week, was falling because it had already been a wet season so far. So up till yesterday,
So these are the
Sheffield
latest stats, up to including yesterday, almost 400 millimetres of rain.
Yeah,
has
almost
fallen
400
since
millimetres.
the 1st of September.
Yeah, for Sheffield. And actually Sheffield is a really good climate site for us because we have daily rainfall records for this site back to 1883. So we've got very long records against which to compare. And actually being in the sort of lee of the Pennines, it's not the wettest place in the region, but it has very good long climate records for us to sort of look at the context of these sorts of events. So yeah, nearly 400 millimetres of rain already this season, and with most of November still to go. So that's 178% of average. So
Wow.
we're sort of looking at,
The third wettest so far.
and that's the third wettest autumn so far.
Still weeks to go.
Yeah, so the record for that site was autumn 2000 was the wettest autumn for Sheffield, and that had 425 millimetres. So not a huge amount to go to be sort of threatening that record really for that part of the country.
And a large part of that fell at the weekend, didn't it?
Yeah, so, last week, yeah. So
week.
this is now, here we're looking at a table of, from our long record, the wettest days recorded at our Sheffield
That's a 24-hour
observing
period,
site.
and for meteorological stats, climatological, we go from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock the following morning.
Yes, that's right.
Period.
Yeah.
These are the wettest.
These are the
recorded at
wettest
that
events
site.
recorded at the site in Sheffield. So the wettest on record was actually 15th of July 1973 with well over 100
Before any
millimetres
of
of
us were
rain.
born.
Falling within that 09 to 0900 24-hour period. So we can look and see that 7th of November this year, so last Thursday, had 63.8 millimetres. So in the context of UK extremes, again, it's not the highest numbers we've seen for a daily record for anywhere in the UK, but for Sheffield, this is
seventh wettest
it's
day
the
on
seventh
record.
wettest, and that's in 137 years worth of of observation. So quite a notable
Pretty
event
notable.
for that. And there are a couple of other interesting things we can sort of pick out from this table. So one thing to note is actually most of this top 10 are summer
Look at
events.
the months there. So June, July, August, they're all, and there's one in September there, I guess, but these are the latest.
Yeah, so we're seeing these sorts of heavy downpours in these kind of summer, often convective type events.
It's more likely to be a thunderstorm or a recurring thunderstorm through the day, whereas this is
this
frontal.
one's is frontal, and it's sort of just got stuck over that part of the country, and so it's notable in this top 10 that this is the only sort of November event that's in there. And actually the only other autumn event in there is from last year, September 2018, when we had Storm Brona pass through, and that brought a lot of rainfall to this region as well. So there's a couple of interesting things to note about, and these are the sorts of things we kind of look for in the climate stats. The things that are unusual maybe, or the things that are showing up other features. So the other notable factor of this table is how many of these events are in recent decades.
Yeah.
So there's quite a few in the 2000s
Yeah.
that are cropping up here. So that's something that's interesting as well to explore further.
Only 2 before I was born. All the rest of since I've been born.
3 before I was born.
Yeah, all right. Anyway, moving on. Let's look at these maps, because these are incredibly powerful maps as well. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so we've got 2 here. So if we start with this one on the left, this is looking at November rainfall so far, 1st to the 10th of November. And it's comparing the rainfall of those 10 days against the sort of November
Total average for the whole month. Okay.
So we would expect at this point in the month we'd be sort of well below the average
you'd
for the
expect
whole
it to be about a third.
yeah. So the thing that stands out on is, again, this region across Yorkshire and into Lincolnshire, east of the Pennines. These blue areas are those areas where we've already exceeded the November monthly average rainfall. And these are some of these areas are starting to push towards sort of twice the normal amount.
In the first third of the month, so there was still with 2/3 of the month, we've already had almost twice their monthly average.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And November's kind of up there as one of the wettest months of the year. Climatologically as well. So we can see that actually this is these extreme values are quite localised in the context of the whole UK.
We've got some water in the system. I think we must have had some rain in the back of this touchscreen. It's not liking it today. Sorry about the flickering. What's this one is the...
And this is an equivalent, but now this is running
so
for the autumn so far from the 1st of September. So we've still got the sort of the rest of November to go. But we can see that for a large swathe of England and Wales, we're already well above the sort of average autumn rainfall. So for all these blue areas, it's already been a wetter than average autumn.
Yes. Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Right. And again, we can sort of see this standout area in South Yorkshire,
northern parts of the Midlands,
where we're sort of exceeding the 170% already.
Similar places were very wet in the summer as well, weren't they?
Yeah, that's right. So some have seen some wet conditions consistently for a number of months now.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Right.
Amazing.
Well,
yes, thank you very much for that, Mark. Yes, absolutely fascinating.
Okay,
Thanks for
you.
coming in.
Yeah.
It's been so incredibly well. We'll try and get some questions from you now. Main question is, why are the graphics flickering, I imagine. But yes, thanks for sending in your questions so far. We'll have Ellie on in a moment to talk about rain gauges. Let's look at some of the questions now. Can we say goodbye to any cold and snowy conditions this coming winter as far as the winter contingency forecast is concerned? Well, it looks pretty cold for the rest of this week, certainly. There's no signs of anything particularly mild coming in terms of snowfall. Well, there will be some over the hills. We had some last weekend, actually, as part of the same, same weather front. Over the hills of Wales and Shropshire had quite a bit as well. So it is cold enough now to see some snow to relatively low levels across parts of Scotland in the next few days over the far north. But they'll be in the form of showers, whereas actually over the hills and mountains across England and Wales, there could be a little bit again later this week. It is on the cold side, and no real signs of things really warming up. Growing perspective on YouTube, could it keep raining forever? Should I buy a boat? Well, that would be unlikely. It's a bit pessimistic, but of course, yeah, in all seriousness, with more rain forecasts later this week, there are warnings in force, and some of that rain could be falling in that really now highly sensitive area across parts of South Yorkshire and the North Midlands. So yes, stay up to date with the latest warnings. The areas have been shifted a little bit around today, but there's a bit of uncertainty about where the front's going to pivot again and whether it's going to pep up on Thursday. So we could see further heavy rain coming in.
Nigel Clifford, YouTube, can we say goodbye to any cold and snowy conditions this coming winter? As far as the Met Office forecast is concerned, they are predicting a mild, wet first half winter, I think. Important to remember that with any long-term forecast, they're averages for the whole of the season, and so you can always get cold, snowy spells within a mild, wet winter, of course, and so you cannot discount any kind of weather when you're looking at such a long period of time when the weather is so chaotic. Basically, what a long-term forecast does is it introduces the relative likelihoods of different kinds of winter. So it doesn't rule out any particular winter. It just says that this type of winter is more likely because of these factors. Based on previous winters and how they responded to the same kinds of factors, whether they're to do with global circulation patterns, sea surface temperatures, El Nino, or what the global computer models are saying. And so the forecasters look at all of these different factors and put a likelihood on different kinds of winters, average for 3-month periods. So yeah, you certainly can't rule out any particular weather type based on those long-term average forecasts.
Edmund Blackadder on YouTube, will the ice eggs hatch? No, sadly, Edmund, good question though. They'll melt, they probably already have, in fact I'm sure they already have. Will-eyed Oni, has the jet stream moved at all, or are we going to continue to get these lows? Well no, the jet stream is still, it's really interesting, it's kind of stuck in this waving pattern, getting a kick from cold plunges across the US, which is amplifying the pattern, taking the jet stream north, and then it's driving south and disrupting close to the UK. So it's kind of disrupting, creating these little lows that just seem to keep on coming, and there's no real change in that pattern. It is staying to the south of us into the early part of next week. And on that trend, Robert Taylor on YouTube asks, who's doing the 10-day trend tomorrow? Easy one to answer, Robert. It will be me. I haven't done one for a while. You've done the last 3, haven't you?
Have I?
Right. Yeah. So yes, it'll be me tomorrow, Robert. So that should be
get a well-earned break.
Not sure about that. Right, is the graphics, have they settled down a bit?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
It's one of those random things, you don't know what's caused it.
But anyway, we can talk about these things now anyway, so we don't necessarily need the graphics. Let's bring our second guest in. Ellie, come along, come in. Thank you for coming on the show again. You have been on before, but just remind everyone what your role is here at the Met Office.
So I'm a meteorologist and I currently work in the observations department. So I have brought some equipment with me today to show you.
Brilliant.
Excellent. What have you brought with you?
I brought some rain gauges.
This is how we measure rainfall. Why is that important? I guess, we need to know how much rain has fallen, as we've seen with those stats that Mark's provided.
Yeah, so we have a radar network, but actually what we need to know is how much of that precipitation reaches the surface, and rain gauges are a fantastic way of measuring that. So whilst we have that radar network, it's really important, and certainly has been in the past before we had that radar network, to know how much rain, snow, hail, sleet is all hitting the ground.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent.
How many rainfall site locations are there across the UK? Because Mark's put together those maps based on rainfall sites, and there's a bit more than 300, isn't there, Met Office sites that Mark uses to compile his data?
Yeah, that's right. There's actually roughly around 3,000 sites around the UK for rainfall. However, some have multiple rain gauges, and it's not just the Met Office that records observations for rainfall. So the UK Rainfall Network is actually made up of a number of different organisations, including us. There's also Environment Agency, SEPA, and Natural Resources Wales. So we are only a portion of the UK Rainfall Network. That is important to explain firsthand. But we obviously have multiple different types of rain gauges, and we've got some examples of manual gauges and automatic gauges to show you.
Excellent.
Let's take a look at the manual gauge.
Sure.
This one.
How long have we been using these types of gauges?
So we have got, as Mark mentioned, there are some really quite old records for rainfall, but as far as we know, this kind of rain gauge, or a manual rain gauge, it goes back before the 1900s. We have around 28-ish rain gauges before the 1900s, back to the 1830s, in fact, as far as we know, but there are rainfall data from before that point.
Right. It's an interesting point that Mark was making earlier about Fitzroy as well. Fitzroy, who set up the Met Office, it wasn't that bothered about collecting widespread rainfall data, because once his thinking, he was interested in the forecast. He was thinking, well, once it's fallen, he wasn't interested in it. So
yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And now it's much more prevalent in terms of meteorologists using that data to really inform us how much rain has fallen on a weather front that's spilling in from the southwest heading northeastwards.
Yeah.
It's really important to know how much heavy rainfall there's been, and intensity and accumulation and the type. So this kind of equipment is really, really useful.
So this is made of copper, is it? This
yes,
it is. It's pretty heavy, but you can take the top off.
Yeah.
Let's see how it works. Let's pour some.
Should we bring it into the middle?
Shall we? So the rain falls in like that, a little bit.
Drip.
Let's say there's been a downpour.
Excellent.
Right, okay, so that's the rain, but this is a purely manual system, so there's no...
Yep.
So
no automation
how
whatsoever.
How do you then measure how much rain? This is
Okay, so if I bring this over here, now this is quite old. This is normally in the meteorological library
well used, isn't
here
it?
in Exeter. So it's a little bit battered, unfortunately, but it is normally stored there. So we've asked very kindly if we can borrow it. So we have to be a bit careful.
Would it be
with this
buried
guy.
under the ground?
Yes, yes. We've actually got a diagram of it if we can actually bring it up. Okay. But
No, you
this
can't.
bit here, excellent. Good work with the graphics. So this bit here is normally sunk underground. So really, this bit would be protruding. So, and as you can see, it's
This bit
quite.
comes off.
Yes, and you can see you've got a spoke. So this bit's the funnel, and yeah, you can tell, copper. And the funnel then points into, if I can tip it up, I don't know whether I can quite.
Can we get it out?
Yes, go for it.
But there's just
So in here, there's a bottle. So this is glass,
Careful.
and this collects the rainfall from the funnel down into it.
Milk
And
Well, how do you make the... what's that? Looks about
30 mils.
15... 30 mils?
good estimation. Okay, so we use a good old-fashioned
Stubborn
measuring
inch.
cylinder. This is what we use. Alex, are you going to do the honours?
Oh, yeah, let me do it.
Absolutely.
Right, so let's see how much there is. I'm going to say 15 mils. Oh, you've done this before, haven't you?
Okay, so you need to have it
Wow,
up
look at
to measure it. You have
60.
to have it up to eyesight, so eye level, and
Yeah.
you're going to look at the bottom of that meniscus. So that's the bottom of the surface water.
50... I'm going to say 58. Yeah, 58.
And
You
this
look
is
at the
in
bottom of that?
millimetres. Yeah, so the bottom of the meniscus. Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So this is manual, and
So
we
you do
still
that-
do this. We still do
this,
this.
once
So
a
some
day?
meteorologists do this, and some climate observers do this. So we have a volunteer network, and they read these once a day. It's normally 9 o'clock in the winter, 10 o'clock in the summer.
So 9 o'clock GMT.
That's right, yes. And we still have a number of these sites around the UK. As I say, this bit is sunk underground. So what we really want with the rain gauge design, if I can pass that on to you guys, really what you want with the rain gauge design is to stop water from bouncing out,
Yes.
stop water from bouncing in, and stop the effect of evaporation. So hence, that partially helps with sinking it into the ground because of where the bottle
That's
sits
why it's
in
a
it.
funnel. So it
Yes,
goes
that's right.
in,
so why you've got a funnel is because you don't want any rain bouncing out or in. Also the depth of it to stop that. So that's actually quite deep. And also, as I say, under the ground, and you really want to avoid evaporation in warm temperatures. So the newer version of these, so these are copper, these are old school ones if you like. The newer ones are stainless steel,
okay.
but still the same principle. And this is known as a 5-inch rain gauge.
5-inch rain gauge.
Yes.
Okay, let's...
So that's a manual
hourglass.
one. This is an automatic one.
Yes, this is an automatic one. So this is called a tipping bucket rain gauge. And this one, we can actually take apart.
Can we?
Yes, so we can take the top off.
All right, let's put it in the middle there.
Bit of manoeuvring. Okay,
Right.
so same principle.
Yeah.
So funnel here, and you can see it's really quite wide.
Yeah.
Funnel's quite slim in the middle, and it's quite deep as well, same principles, and there is actually a lovely filter in the top, which looks a little bit like a microphone head without the fuzzy bit on.
Yeah.
And all that's doing is stopping any debris getting in.
Okay. Leaves, etc.
Exactly. Yeah, bugs. Sometimes with these ones you can get the odd bug that falls
So
in.
this is then wired up to a computer.
Yep, that's right.
It tells you how
See
much
the
has
end of
fallen.
the wire here.
And
So
why
that
is
will
it
be
called a
done.
tipping bucket?
Right, so if we take the lid off, somebody want to grab that lid?
Oh, my hands are full, I can't.
Just pull.
Just pull.
Yep.
Oh, that lid. Right.
Yeah. So it should.
Screw here.
Yeah, that's it.
This
Should
is,
pop off. There we go. Okay, so the bottom of the tipping bucket.
Ah.
So can you
never
guess which
seen
one's the
one of these
bucket?
before.
Yeah,
It
so
goes in and it tips up.
that's right.
And once that's tipped over, then it starts to fill up there.
Yep.
And it tips that way. And it tips that way.
Very simple.
And that comes out the bottom, so it doesn't collect the water. It just
Temporarily measures it.
it measures the amount.
And then
It goes
tips
back
down.
and
then measures a
Yeah,
new
they've got a bit of film in there. So what the idea is, the rainfall comes in, fills up one side, it tips, and it also, there's a switch underneath it that calculates, well, it senses when it's tipped.
Right.
So
okay.
each one of these buckets is 0.2 millimetres in terms of
Yeah.
rainfall. So it'll tip, And
Looks like a lot for 0.2, but that's 0.2 averaged over the whole.
Yeah,
of
I mean, there's a lot of thought that's gone into
Yeah,
this
yeah,
design, to be fair. But yes, the principle is you get 0.2 millimetres and then it senses it knows exactly how much that is, and then it flips. You can also measure a rate by this.
Okay.
Because you know how quickly it's done it.
But you can't
You
with that one.
can't with that one.
No, no, you
But
can't.
you have a manual observer who can see how fast the rain is.
There's ways around it. Yeah, there's ways
Brilliant.
around it. And what's really interesting about this one is you've got to get a rain gauge as flat as possible, so it's got to be as level as possible, because again, it can affect the rainfall amount that you actually measure. Also, the wind really affects it. So if you have a very sheltered rain gauge, you're not going to get representative measurement. But equally, if it's so open, the wind massively affects it, and the actual rain gauge can create what's called eddies itself, which can affect it. So you've got to really be careful where you put these.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the really interesting thing is that actually in here, there is a spirit level
Oh yeah.
to help you get it completely flat. So it's exactly level.
Note to Steve, this desk isn't. Can you sort this desk out, Steve? It's obviously
So
wonk.
these are fantastic. And as I say, sometimes you have these both together.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have these now.
Right.
So
And what's this?
so this, some of you actually may recognise this more, to be honest, because this is a home weather station rainfall.
Okay.
So this is a rain gauge from your average back garden, not necessarily terribly expensive, but your average weather station.
It was expensive. Because
Well, in comparison to these,
Yeah, and there's a
Quite-
tipping, is there a tipping bucket
it's the
there?
same principle. So if you
Right.
tip that, you can hear
Hear
it.
it tipping. So you can
Yeah, you can hear it. Same
get one
principle.
of those in your back
Just
garden.
gotta
But if you
read
are
switch.
setting one up in your back garden, make sure it's not close to your building
Or your fence.
or your fence.
Yeah.
So make sure it's in a nice open space. But you don't have to bury that in the ground. You can
your
just
Nope.
sprinkler.
They normally are on a lever that's on
wise words.
some kind of post. So yeah, you have them alongside everything else. And again, I mean, you can see it's got a sensor on the end and it's got a wire out of it, so it will hook up. And a lot of people send in their data from this kind of equipment to our weather observations
WOW
website.
network, the WOW
yes,
network, yeah,
which is what I look after.
Ah, excellent, excellent. Is that, so we can go to the, is it the WOW website?
Yes,
And then people
you can go to
actually
the WOW
then-
website.
People can
yeah.
register to
Yep.
be an observer as part
Yeah,
of
you can.
help to feed into our network.
Yeah, and our voluntary climate network that also record the measurements from this also send in their data via that method too.
Ah, brilliant. Fantastic. Ellie, absolutely fascinating. Thank
Yes.
you very much for coming on.
No
Thank you
problem.
for explaining everything. That's really, really interesting.
I'll take that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Ellie. Yes, so you can go onto the website, look for Met Office WOW, and you can be part of that network as well, which is really useful. Any more questions coming in?
Let's have a look.
How do you measure rainfall amounts with snow falling from the sky, Ellie? Come back on. Come back on, Ellie. Yes.
Okay, so it really depends on the snowfall situation. So if snow has fallen and you just want to record it, say in a manual gauge, what you do is take the funnel plus the bottle, take it indoors, and either let it melt naturally, so you know how much water. It's always equivalent water to snow.
Right. Okay.
Because it's quite difficult to measure snow,
Yeah.
in all honesty. So you take the funnel, you take the bottle, and you let it melt. If you haven't got enough time, you get warm water, not hot, because you might crack the glass bottle,
Okay.
but you melt the
Something
snow
warm.
with a certain amount of, there's lots of rules.
Yeah.
So a certain amount of warm water, melt the snow. Obviously, you then get an equivalent water, but you minus the amount that you've put in.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
If you can't do that, and you have to do it in situ, yes, it's more difficult, in all honesty. But as I say, if it's still falling, you're
Yeah.
never going to, and it's also rained and then snowed.
Yeah, that's tricky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Snow
You're
and
very
then rain.
difficult to
Yeah,
work
yeah.
out how much exact
Yeah.
snowfall you're going to get.
Another quick question while you're on
Mm-hmm.
about the manual rain gauge looks incredibly primitive. What if it leaks?
What if it leaks? There's been a lot of design features in this. I mean, we've had quite a while to.
It's copper as well,
Perfect
isn't
it.
it?
Yes, it's copper.
It's not made out of.
And
Yeah,
the way
like
I don't know whether we can show the camera in here. Let's have a look. I don't know whether you can quite see, but I don't know whether you can quite see it. But the funnel design is pretty solid. There's no gaps in it between. I mean, you can
Yeah, that's not.
tell everybody
that's
there.
Not, that's not going to
It's
leak.
actually quite difficult for it to leak, in all honesty. The only way you get it to leak is if you miss the bottle with the end of the funnel, and that's quite difficult too because it's very slim.
Excellent. Quick question, which we may have to get you on for another. How do you measure wind speed? Well, that's with an anemometer, isn't it? A little little windmill thing that goes around. That's for another week, Ellie, I
Yes.
think. But,
Another show
No
to
problem.
tell.
I'll
thank
take
you very
my
much. Yeah, thank you
measuring
very much.
cylinder.
It's fascinating, absolutely brilliant. Thank
And
you for all your
don't forget,
questions.
Nick's birthday present.
Don't
tell him.
Yeah, I know about that. It's getting cold. A question from Facebook. It's getting cold. What are the chances of snow next week? Well, it's already turned cold. As I said, it's cold enough for some hill snow in the next few days. Let's concentrate there. The main message, although it is cold, and it's really cold in the wind out there today, the main theme is still the rainfall, isn't it? That's
Still the
biggest
rainfall.
concern.
Still a number of rainfall warnings in force. Initially, actually, for tomorrow, for parts of Wales and the southwest. I mean, the rest of today, there is some rain around for the rest of today. The showers feeding into northern, eastern and western parts of the country. But let's head to tomorrow. Tomorrow's a cold start to the day. It's a widespread frost for Scotland, for much of England as well. But the next area of rain's moving in. There it is, a narrow band of rain.
Quite an active weather front, that, isn't it?
An active
Swinging.
weather front.
Most places are going to have a fine day tomorrow, but then it comes in. What's that? What time is that? So that's sort of lunchtime. Cornwall, Pembrokeshire, seen a bit of that rain.
Yeah, and then it becomes slow moving as it moves in, and so this is 4 o'clock tomorrow, and this is when it starts to become slow moving. Rush hour, obviously.
Dark.
South Wales.
Time of year, 4 o'clock. It's dismal.
And there we go. The rain warning is on the map there. South Wales into parts of Dorset, Somerset, parts of Devon. And yeah, it's going to be a period of heavy rain, essentially, in places where we've already seen a lot of rain recently.
Like you say, rush hour tomorrow evening, the M5, perhaps the M4, not very pleasant. There's some white on that chart. There's snow over the Brecon Beacons.
There is, yeah, some higher routes of Wales there. Possibly the first snow of the season.
What's that road called? Heads of the Valleys Road, is it?
A490, A470, A470, I
You're our
think.
Welsh correspondent.
I think, A470.
Heads of the Valleys Road.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
But they could see some there.
Yeah, it could be tricky there later tomorrow, later Wednesday with some heavy rain and then snowfall at higher levels. And it's this weather front really that becomes particularly slow moving. Here's the low pressure it's attached to. And just like in similar situations recently, it's coming in from the northwest, it's sliding down this large area of high pressure in the Atlantic, and then it's becoming slow moving across southern parts.
This is kind of what happened at the weekend as well, but that weather front was just further north, which is why the rain got stuck over Yorkshire, because it was all just a bit further north. Now, we're not talking about the same amount of rain with this system, just to be clear, but it is going to kind of pivot around in the same thing, and some places will be stuck under that rain band for quite a while, which is why we've got a warning in force for Thursday. That's that yellow area there, that larger area.
First half of Thursday, it's more southern parts of England that are expected to have some very wet weather. You can see the main area there, the main weather front, home counties, London, southern counties, Devon, Cornwall. And it really lasts for much of the morning into the early afternoon. And then later in the day, another weather front sort of becomes active.
Peps up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Peps up
further north.
More moisture in from the North Sea, and that could be in those very sensitive areas across parts of Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, and the Midlands as well. So that is another area of concern. So actually, interestingly, there's two warnings in force. Even though actually there's one larger area and there's another area within the same area, and that's because of the impact level and the likelihood and the difference on the matrix of our warning system. So the warnings are measured on their likelihood and their possible impacts, and because of that very sensitive area, there's a smaller chance, but it could cause higher impacts. So
even with less rainfall than other parts of England and Wales are likely to see, it would still come on top of a worse affected area, and so higher impacts expected from that if it happens. But these are narrow bands of rainfall, and so don't expect that if you're in this yellow area you're going to see a lot of rainfall. It's not quite one of those situations where everywhere will get soaked. It will be very localised, and it will be difficult to pinpoint, even at this stage, 1 to 2 days out, exactly where we'll get the heaviest
because it'll be
rainfall.
so narrow. 50 miles makes a big difference. It's not, as Aidan was saying, it's not a weather front sweeping across the country where everywhere gets 2 hours of rainfall. This will just be some areas stuck under it for quite a few hours, several hours, and areas either side of it could stay largely dry. So there'll be big differences in rainfall totals.
You can see it there, that narrow band there, 8 a.m. Thursday. Norfolk not seeing much more than a few showers, Birmingham virtually dry. But then some of these parts in the South Midlands into, say, Essex, Suffolk, and these areas could change. The location of this weather front could alter by just 20 miles or so and end up with a very different day for those areas.
So that's why we say stay tuned to the forecast, and that's why that yellow area is so large at this stage. We'll firm up all the details over the next 24 hours. But after Thursday, that low does finally pull away, but take a look at the big picture. There's the low going there, but you can notice the winds, the isobars pointing to the northeast. The wind's always coming down from the northeast into Friday, so although it will be turning a bit drier with the winds coming around the low like that, they're bringing moisture in from the North Sea, so eastern areas will still see showers, but this is a little ridge of high pressure toppling in, keeping the nights clear and frosty across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but also bringing some dry weather.
Plenty of fine weather the next few days. Scotland, Northern Ireland, frosty, sunny spells by day, a few showers with some snow over the Scottish mountains, but lots of fine weather over the next few days. Just as we've seen recently, Scotland and Northern Ireland haven't seen the amount of rainfall that England and Wales has seen in recent weeks. And yet again, we've got a ridge of high pressure building in from the northwest for just ahead of the weekend, but another low.
I think it'll be in place for much of Saturday. Many places at this stage looking largely dry to start the weekend, although it will be cold. But that low never really goes away from the eastern side, does it? And it keeps feeding showers in. And then by Saturday, that's the ridge. It's a pretty feeble one with two weather fronts either side of it. So
it's getting squeezed.
It is getting squeezed. And then a bit of uncertainty about the timing of this next low coming in, bringing rain potentially on Sunday into the west. But we'll have more on that. As I say, we'll have more details over the next few days. I'll be looking at that with the 10-day trend tomorrow as well. But yeah, it could be a pretty cold night, Saturday night into Sunday across some parts of the UK. Clear tonight, actually, if you're looking at the full moon tonight. It's given the name the Beaver Moon, the full moon in November. So you may see a little bit about that. There's more on that on our Twitter feed. But a decent chance of being able to see it tonight. Any more questions?
A couple of questions. Peter Anthony Finch on Facebook has said they're not allowed to tell us if there's going to be heavy snow in the future in case they cause mass hysteria. I don't know what you've been looking at, Peter, but we haven't seen any evidence of heavy snowfall away from, say, the very highest ground across the UK. And it's our job, when we do see evidence of heavy snowfall, to tell you as much as we know, as soon as we know it. We've done it before. When the Beast from the East happened last year, we talked about it for a long time ahead of the event.
It was 2 years ago, the Beast from the East.
No, it's 2018.
Oh, 2 winters ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do talk about it because we have to highlight it, because snow is one of the biggest disruptive factors of weather across the UK.
And we, in this office, it's full of meteorologists who love talking about snow, so it would be difficult to keep that sort of thing a secret. It's just that there's no sign of widespread heavy snow at the moment, just a lot more rain, unfortunately, in the immediate future. Will that snow in South Wales fall to around 300 to 400 metres above sea level? Yeah, I think it could, couldn't it? It's about that height.
Again, because it's at that front, that pivot in front, it depends on exactly where it is as to where. And snow is always very fickle. It's always on a knife edge as to exactly where the cold level is, where the snow level is, and it doesn't take much. So it's possible at this stage. This is 2 days away. So as I said, keep saying stay tuned.
There's tomorrow's snow as well.
It comes in,
and then there's another chance that we'll see some on the back edge of Thursday's rainfall as it pulls away.
Deborah Watford, this is a common asked question on YouTube. Can it really be too cold to snow? Or we should do a myth busting service. That's an often asked question. No, it can't really be too cold for snow, but
unless you get down to absolute freezing.
Yeah, you get down to absolute zero, then yes. But colder air holds less moisture, so that actually with really, really cold air, it doesn't hold enough moisture for it to snow or snow significantly. So actually, you kind of do need a balance. Sometimes with exceptionally cold air, it just isn't able to hold any moisture, and it just drops a little bit of snow initially, and then there isn't any. So that's kind of where that theory comes from. But technically, no, it can never be too cold to snow.
More often than not, in this country, we don't get that kind of cold.
No, because we're surrounded by
snow.
Sea.
I think that might. People repeat that a lot in this country. I think it might come from the fact that it tends to be the driest conditions where we get the lowest temperatures. So it's the other way round. When it's dry and clear in the winter, it's particularly cold. When we get cloud and stuff from the Atlantic, it tends to be milder. So yeah, can it be too cold to snow? It can be too dry, or it can be dry. I'll get back to you on that one.
Back to it. But no,
we'll come up with a new.
I think, but we'll come up with a new
scientifically
theory. We need to work on this myth-busting format. But thank you very much for watching. I will have the 10-day trend tomorrow. That'll be on Facebook and on YouTube, of course. Thank you for sending in your questions. Please do keep them coming in, even if you're not watching this live. Sorry about the slightly flickering screen we had earlier on. Big thank you to Ellie and to Mark for coming on. And yes. Tell your friends about the show if you'd liked it. Give us the big thumbs up and do tune in again next week. We'll see you again soon.